important. And if you remember in last part of the Nyaya Vaisesika, because I told that we'll be completing it in 2 weeks' time, 2 lectures. So last lecture we took about 10 days back. In between, there were special classes regarding philosophy. Some 2 topics of Western philosophy were covered. So today we will be completing the Nyaya Vaisesika chapter. If you remember, last time we covered the basic uh, tenets of Nyaya Vaisesika philosophy. As you know, Nyaya basically depends. They are the exponents of epistemology as a part of their philosophical system, and Vaisesika is mostly metaphysical and ontology. So in fact, in last lecture, I told that after analysis of PYQs and syllabus, I have identified 7 topics pertaining to Nyaya Vaisesika, which are very important. So out of these 7 topics, 3 I covered in last lecture, along with the basic tenets of Nyaya Vaisesika philosophy. So the topics which were covered last week, last lecture were first thing, abhava as a category declared by Vaisesika. Second is Vaisesik's theory of categories, and third is Nyaya proofs of existence of God. So these 3 important topics, subtopics actually, were covered in last lecture. Today's lecture we are going to cover remaining 4 topics of 4 subtopics actually of Nyaya Vaisesika, which will be Nyaya notion of Vyapti, which is very important. It comes repeatedly in exam. Then second is Hetwabhyas, that is fallacy of inference. Third is Partha Pramanyavad. This is again a theory of validity of Nyaya Vaisesika. And then another is Nyaya's Asat Karyavad. So that also, and then Nyaya view of self. So actually not 4. Actually, we will be covering about 5 topics today, subtopics. 3 we have covered already. So there are total 8 topics we are going to cover, important subtopics in the Nyaya Vaisesika philosophy. So now let us try to start the first topic, first subtopic from the Nyaya Vaisesika philosophy, which we are going to cover today. And this will be Nyaya notion of Vyapti. So we'll start now. Nyaya is basically mainly epistemological philosophy they have given, and they are complemented by Vaisesika, which they have given ontology or metaphysical theories. So basically, Nyaya, whenever we talk about Nyaya, it deals with knowledge, theories of knowledge, what are its validity, what is error, what is inference, how inference is known, what are the valid conditions of inference, all those things we discuss in Nyaya. In Nyaya, actually, one of the most important concepts is the notion of Vyapti. Now, what is Vyapti? Vyapti is basically invariable concomitance. So, if you can understand, because if let us say there is a fire, there is smoke, then there is a fire. So, invariable concomitance between smoke and fire is Vyapti. And this serves as the logical foundation of inference. That is Anuman. In Sanskrit, it's called Anuman. As we know, Nyaya school basically accepts 4 valid pramanas, that is means of valid knowledge: Pratyaksh, Anuman, Upaman, and Shabd. So these are 4: perception, inference, comparison or analogy, and testimony of reliable authorities. And of these 4, Anuman is very, very important, and Vyapti is basically the basis of Anuman. So if you can understand like this. So this is a core principle on which inference or Anuman is based. So this is what we are going to study today in this topic. Now, if you can understand meaning and nature of Vyapti, now let us try to understand. Now, Vyapti is a Sanskrit term. It literally means pervasion or universal concomitance or universal spread. So this is its literal meaning. It is a Sanskrit word. Now, it is defined as the unconditional, universal, and invariable relation between Hetu, that is middle term, and the Sadh, that is major term, in an inference. So this is very important definition. This you have to quote whenever any question regarding Vyapti is asked. It is defined as unconditional, universal, and invariable relation between Hetu and Sadh in an inference. Now, in example, let us see what is Hetu and what is Sadh. As I have already told earlier, fire and smoke. So we'll take the same example. The hill has fire because it has a smoke. Let us say this is the example. Now there are what is basically Hetu and what is Sadhya. Let us try to understand. Now before we go, we'll go sequentially. So for example, hill. Hill is the minor term and it's called Paksh. Smoke is the reason it is called Hetu. Fire is Sadhya, it is called predicate. Vyapti, wherever there is a smoke, there is fire. This relationship is called Vyapti. So ultimately, what is Hetu? Hetu is smoke. What is Sadhya? Sadhya is fire. An invariable relationship between Hetu and Sadhya, that is smoke and fire, is called Vyapti. So with an example, we can understand very well, and this is Vyapti. But for inference to be valid, or for Anuman to be a valid means of knowledge, this relationship must be free from exceptions and not based on accidental conditions. So this should be free from exceptions, that is Anupadhi, and not based on accidental conditions. Now, what is structure of inference? Now, before we go further detail in Vyapti, now let us try to understand what is the structure of inference. Inference has 5 parts basically, and it's called Panch Avaya. So, what are 5 parts? First is Pratigya, that is proposition. Proposition here is that hill has fire. Now, this is example we'll try to understand. So, this is called Pratigya. Hetu, because there is a smoke, this is Hetu part. Third is Udaharan. Udaharan means example, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Fourth is Upanay, that is application. The hill has smoke. Then Nigaman. Nigaman is conclusion. Therefore, the hill has fire. So these are 5 basically steps of inference, if you can say, Panch Avaya. Now let us go little more detail in Vyapti. Now there are various types of Vyaptis, and they are, if I can explain, on different basis, there are different kinds of Vyaptis. So first is based on extension. There are 2 kinds of Vyaptis. First is Samvyapti, second is Visham Vyapti. Now Samvyapti means equal extension of Hetu and Sadhya. That is, wherever there is smoke, there is a fire, and vice versa. So this kind of example or category is Samvyapti. What is Visham Vyapti? Hetu has a narrower extension than Sadhya. For example, wherever there is smoke, there is fire, but not vice versa. So this kind of Vyapti is Visham Vyapti. Now another distinction based on logical form. First is Anvaya Vyapti, that is positive concomitance. Wherever there is Hetu, there is Sadhya. This kind of Vyapti is called Anvaya Vyapti. For example, wherever there is smoke, there is a fire. Now, second is Vyatirek Vyapti. Vyatirek means negative concomitance. Wherever there is no sadhya, there is no hetu. For example, if there is no fire, there is no smoke. So this is Vyatirek Vyapti. Now, after this distinction, now let us try to understand what are the valid conditions for Vyapti. Because if Vyapti is not valid, inference itself will become invalid. So what are valid conditions of Vyapti or Vyapti Gyan? Factors for Vyapti Gyan. First is Anvay. That is positive correlation should be there. If one is present, another should be present. Second, Vyatirek. Negative correlation should be there. If Hetu is absent, Sadhu should be absent. Then Upadhi Niras. Upadhi Nirasa, elimination of accidental or conditional factors should be there. Then Tark. Hypothetical reasoning, reduction to absurdity should not be there. Then Samanya Lakshan Pratyaksh. Perception of the universal should be there. Then Vyabhichara Graha. Absence of contradictory instances should be there. So these are basically 6 conditions of valid Vyapti. Now in Nyaya, what is the procedure to establish Vyapti? Now let us try to understand that. In Nyaya school, what is the procedure to establish Vyapti? First is repeated observation should be there. That is Pratyaksh observation here is Pratyaksh only. Of agreement in presence and in agreement in absence. That is Anvay and Vyatirek. Then second is no contrary instance should be recorded. That is there should not be any Vyabhichar. Then third is Tark. That is indirect proof or hypothetical reasoning helps establish necessity. Then fourth is Samanya Lakshan Pratyaksh. That is perception of class essences and their relations. For example, manhood implies mortality. So that should be there available. Now let us try to understand what is difference between Vyapti and Upadhi. An Upadhi is a limiting condition that makes a supposed Vyapti conditional rather than universal. So basically, Upadhi is a limiting condition to Vyapti. This we should understand because this also will come again and again. For example, wherever there is smoke, there is fire, may be falsely generalized unless we exclude cases of artificial smoke or moist fuel. So these examples, that is cases of artificial smoke or moist fuel, are termed as Upadhi. So for a Vyapti to be valid, there should not be any Upadhi linked with it. So hence Upadhi Nirasa is essential. Now let us see what are the criticism of this kind of theory of Vyapti. Because as I keep on telling, any question or any observation or any topic is not complete unless we critically evaluate that topic. So let us now try to critically evaluate this Vyapti. Now, first is Charvak has criticized it because Charvak, they only advocate Pratyaksh as valid means of Praman. Pratyaksh is only, that is perception is the only valid source of knowledge for Charvak. Hence, all other sources of knowledge they classify as invalid. And accordingly, they criticize here also. So now let us see what are their criticism. As I told, they recognize perception alone as a valid means of Praman. They reject Vyapti as an illicit generalization, a logical leap from the known to unknown. That's what their criticism is. They deny the possibility of universal inference. And they say Vyapti cannot be observed, only particular cases can be observed, and hence Vyapti is not valid, and it's invalid means of inference is invalid means of Praman, and therefore Vyapti also becomes invalid. This kind of concomitance or relationship between Hetu and Sadhya cannot be observed universally. So therefore, they reject this. Now, let us see what is Buddhist view. Now, as per Dignag and Dharmakirti, they are Buddhist scholars. Vyapti is grounded in Tadatmya and Tadutpatti. These are Sanskrit terms again, meaning identity of nature and cause-effect relationship. Now, for them, inference is based on logical necessity rather than empirical generalization. Vyapti is not learned inductively but assumed a priori, similar to Kantian categories. So here, basically, Buddhism is this cause and effect thing. Buddhism is basing on logical necessity rather than empirical generalization. And in a way, if you see, their theory is more or less similar to a Kantian theory of categories. So therefore, they do not agree with Nyaya view of Vyapti. But besides this, there has been internal contradictions also, or internal debate and internal accusations also in Nyaya school itself. So now let us see that. Early Nyaya was cautious, later defended it via sophisticated epistemic mechanisms. Now, their debate with Mimamsaks. Now, Kumaril Bhatt accepted Anuplabdhi as a fifth pramana for Vyapti, which Nyaya rejected. So there is a little difference between Mimamsa and Nyaya school, because they are accepting Anuplabdhi as a fifth pramana. And that they say that will make Vyapti valid. Now, Nyaya school is not accepting that. Now, what is philosophical significance of Vyapti? Let us try to understand that. Vyapti is very, very necessary condition for inference to be valid. So, this is very, very central to Indian logical realism. The view that universals and their relations are knowable. It ensures that inference is not a guesswork, but a rational method grounded in experience and supported by abstraction. And if you compare with Western logic, so unlike Western deductive logic, Indian inference moves from particulars to general. So this is again very important. And then applies the general back to particular. So this is a very key difference between Western deductive logic and Indian inference. Now this completes the fourth topic of the Nyaya Vaisesika school. Now we'll go to fifth topic. Nyaya notion of Hetu Abhyas, that is fallacy of inference. Now, if you see, these two topics are interrelated in a way, because Hetu we have Hetu and Sadhya we have already said, because the relation between Hetu and Sadhya is called Vyapti. Now, Vyapti, after studying Vyapti, now what are fallacies of Hetu or fallacies of inference? Now we'll try to understand here. So, see, in first introduction, I'm not going to cover this because you know that, but just I would like to tell that for inference to be valid, the Hetu must be present in this subject and have invariable concomitance, that is Vyapti with the Sadhya. So these are the two main conditions of inference. That Hetu be present in subject, that is Pakshadharmata, and have invariable concomitance with Sadhya. If the Hetu fails to meet these requirements, it results in a fallacy. And that is called Hetu Abhyas. So basically, and then it will make the inference invalid. So now let us go in little in detail, because the topics we are trying to understand in little detail, because these are very, very important topics as far as Nyaya Vaisesika school is concerned. So what is the meaning in detail of Hetu Abhyas? Now, Hetu Abhyas is a Sanskrit term, because mostly in Indian philosophy, we will see even Buddhism and Jainism also, they have used also Sanskrit terms. So you should be thorough with those terms and you should try to remember. So here Hetu Abhyas is Sanskrit term, which literally means that which appears to be a reason, but it is not. So this is its literal meaning. That which appears to be a reason, but actually it is not a reason. These are called material fallacies of inference, where the flaw lies in the content of reasoning rather than its form. So it's not a logical form of the sentence or structure. These are material fallacies, which are covered by Hetwabhyas. Now, again, we'll try to understand what is the structure of inference, and then we'll come again to Hetwabhyas. Now, see, in fact, earlier topic also it was covered. Here again we are covering, because this you have to explain whether you want to explain Vyapti, whether you want to explain Hetwabhyas, or whether you want to explain inference as far as Nyaya school is concerned. So structure of inference you have to know, and that is very, very important. So see, as we have seen already, the structure of inference, first is Paksh, then Hetu, then Sadhya, then Vyapti, and then Paksh Dharmata. So these are five basically terms of, or you can say parts of inference. Paksh is the subject, that is the hill. Hetu, or I mean, the example we have taken as there is smoke on the hill, therefore there is a fire on the hill. So this is the inferential statement we have taken. So accordingly, we are explaining with this example. So Paksh is the hill. Hetu, that is a reason or middle term. Here is smoke. Sadhya, that is predicate or conclusion, is fire. Vyapti is basically relation, universal unconditional relation between Hetu and Sadhya. So this is a very good definition of Vyapti, if you can see. The universal and unconditional relationship between Hetu and Sadhya is called Vyapti. What is Hetu? Hetu is smoke. What is Sadhya? Sadhya is fire. So unconditional relationship between fire and smoke is called Vyapti. Paksh Dharmata, the presence of Hetu in the Paksh. Paksh is hill. So there is a smoke is present on the hill, therefore fire is concluded or inferred that there is a fire on the hill. Now, if any of these elements are flawed, any of these five elements are flawed or improperly related, the inference becomes fallacious, that is, Hetwabhyas comes up. Now, as per Nyaya, how many kinds of Hetwabhyas are there? Let us try to understand that. There have been books and the Nyaya philosophers who have given various, written in their various books, Nyaya Sutras and their commentaries. Now, there are 5 types of Hetwabhyas. What are those 5 types? Now, let us try to go in detail. First is Asiddha. All these are Sanskrit terms I am again repeating, so you should be thorough with this. First is Asiddha, that is unproved middle term. If Hetu is not established, either because it does not exist or is irrelevant. So this is the Asiddha category. Now in Asiddha also, there are 3 kinds of Asiddha category, subcategory if you can say. So first is Swarupa Siddha. That is, middle term is self-contradictory or impossible by nature itself. For example, sound is a quality because it is visible. So this is a statement just demonstrating Swarupa Siddha. Then second is Asraya Siddha. That is, subject or locus does not exist. For example, Golden Mountain is fiery because it has a smoke. Now, Golden Mountain itself does not exist. So this kind of contradiction is Asraya Siddha. Now, third is Vyapatva Asiddha. That is absence of universal relation itself. For example, hill has a smoke because it has fire. Here, fire does not invariably lead to smoke. That is reverse Vyapti. So this kind of Vyapti, this thing is Vyapta Siddha. Now, second category, because earlier we have said there are 5 types of Hetwabhyas. So first is Asiddha. In Asiddha, there are 3 subcategories. Now, what is second type of Hetwabhyas? That is Savyavichara or deviating middle. So inconclusive or deviating middle. Now again, this Sa-Vyavichara kind of Hetwabhyas is also three kinds. So again, three subcategories will be Sadharan, Asadharan, and Anupsamhari. So now what is Sadharan? Hetu is too broad. It appears in both Sapaksh and Vipaksh. For example, the hill has fire because it is knowable. So now knowability applies to fire as well as non-fire also. Then Asadharan. Hetu is too narrow. Sound is eternal because it is audible. So but audibility does not imply eternality. So therefore it's Asadharan kind of Hetuabhyas. Third is Anupsamhari. Hetu is found in all cases, offering no discriminatory power. For example, all things are eternal because they are knowable. So this kind of statement, which leads nowhere, comes up in Anupsamhari category. Now, what is third type of Hetuabhyas? Sat Pratipaksh. That is inferentially contradicted middle. The Hetu is contradicted by another Hetu of equal strength supporting the opposite conclusion. So that is called Sat Pratipaksh kind of Hetuabhyas. For example, sound is eternal because it is audible. Second is sound is non-eternal because it is produced. So therefore, these two becomes contradictory and two Hetus cancel each other. So therefore, it becomes invalid kind of inference. Now, fourth kind of Hetuabhyas is Badhit. That is contradicted by perception or valid testimony. That kind of Hetuabhyas is called valid, Badhit. The conclusion is directly contradicted by a stronger pramana such as perception. For example, fire is cold because it is substance, but we know through perception that fire is hot. So therefore, this kind of Hetuabhyas is called Badhit. Now, fifth is Viruddh. Contradictory reason. Hetu proves the opposite of intended conclusion. This is called Viruddh. For example, sound is eternal because it is produced. Now, in this sentence itself, if you see, if something is produced, it cannot be eternal. So therefore, this kind of Hetuabhyas is called Viruddh. Now, what is its philosophical importance of these kind of fallacies? Nyaya fallacies are material fallacies, as I have already clearly told. They are not logical fallacies. Here, inference is grounded in empirical reality and practical uses. So, by classifying Hetuabhyas, Nyaya provides an epistemic safeguard against false reasoning and strengthens logical rigor. So, this is important as far as Hetuabhyas is concerned. Now, let us see what are the various critical views as far as this kind of theory of Hetuabhyas is concerned. Now, as you know, Charvak, because they believe only in perception, so they are first and strongest critique of this. They reject inference entirely due to lack of observable vyapti. They criticize all inferences as fallacious, generalization based on prior assumption. Hetuabhyases are proof for them that inference is unreliable. In fact, they say that whole inference itself is Hetuabhyas, and it's not only part of it. So they are in a different, basically, trajectory. So they reject inference altogether, including Vyapti or any other kind of conclusion, and they say everything is fallacious. Now, as far as Buddhists are concerned, especially Dignag and Dharmakirti, these are Buddhist philosophers, they treat Hetu validation via Tairupya, that is three characteristics of a valid reason, that is present in the Paksh, present in similar instances, Sapaksh, absent in dissimilar instances, that is Vipaksh. Their critique aligns with Nyaya's rejection of deviant reasons, that is Savyavichara, but Buddhists insist Vyapti is a priori, not inductively known. So this we have seen in the earlier topic also. They believe mostly in a priori categories, and if you remember, their Buddhist theory is more similar to Kant. So Kant's categories, which are a priori. Now, what are Western analogies for, I mean, we will, because if we have some comparative Western view, that also we should discuss. So, Nyaya fallacies align closely with material fallacies in Aristotelian logic. So this is again very important. Whenever you discuss about Hetu Abhyas, please do mention this because this is going to fetch you better marks. Now, these are the fallacies given in Aristotelian logic, petitio principii, circular reasoning, non causa, pro causa, false cause, and contradictio in edicto, contradictory premise. So these are basically Greek terms. I keep on telling whenever you are dealing with Western philosophy, some Greek or Latin terms will be there. Whenever you are dealing with Indian philosophy, definitely Sanskrit terms will be there. You should be knowing those, and appropriately you should use those terms. Now we'll go to sixth subtopic of Nyaya school, that is Partha Pramanyavad. Now, Partha Pramanyavad is basically a theory of validity of knowledge. And in Indian philosophical systems, there are two main theories of validity of knowledge. One is Partha Pramanyavad, mainly promoted by Nyaya school. Another is Swatah Pramanyavad. Their exponent are mainly Mimamsak, so Mimamsa school. So on the one hand, we have Nyaya, and the other hand Mimamsa, and they are totally, I mean, we will see the comparative views also in this topic, but one is Partha Pramanyavad, another is Swatah Pramanyavad. Now let us start. Now Partha Pramanyavad is basically a view that knowledge is not self-validating. So at production or at induction, knowledge is neutral and subsequently it's validated. It becomes valid only when verified through external criteria. So this is basically the basis of Partha Pramanyavad, that knowledge becomes valid after verification through some external criteria. Now this position is definitely against Mimamsa Swatah Pramanyavad. I already told Mimamsa believes in Swatah Pramanyavad, which holds that knowledge is intrinsically valid unless contradicted. So this is Swatah Pramanyavad, theory of Mimamsa. Now let us go in detail. Now for Nyaya, knowledge is a revelation of an object. It reflects an external reality distinct from knowing subject. So in a way, if we go in deep and we understand, Nyaya school is basically realist in metaphysics and pragmatist in epistemology. What does it mean? Realist in metaphysics means truth is defined as correspondence theory. There is a correspondence theory of truth. Because to know whether it is true or not, it should correspond with reality. So that is called yatharthata. So when cognition accurately reflects the object. So this is called correspondence theory of truth. So Nyaya believe in that kind of metaphysics. So that is realist. And it's pragmatist in epistemology, which means successful action serves as the test of truth. That is pravritti samarathya. So this is a pragmatist view in epistemology. Thus, for Nyaya school, truth has two components. One is nature, another is test. So nature should, that is the nature of the knowledge should correspond with the object, and test of knowledge is that it should result in practical success in guiding action. So these are two basically components of the truth or true knowledge, you can say. So if we say, we take an example, if one perceives water, drinks it and quenches thirst, the cognition is valid. If one pursues a mirage thinking it is water and finds nothing, the cognition is invalid. Now what is Partha Pramanyavad? Let us try to understand little more detail. Now Nyaya holds that knowledge is neither valid or invalid at its inception. It is epistemologically neutral. This is a very important doctrine. Its validity and invalidity, that is pramanya or apramanya, are ascertained after the cognition arises based on the extrinsic factors. So basically, this is the thrust of, or this is the basis of the Nyaya epistemology, and it is Partha Pramanivad. So cognition is not true because it is verified. It is verified because it is true. So this is Nyaya's axiom. Very important. Sometimes this also comes in the exam, that discuss it or explain it. Now, here validity is inferred when the cognition leads to successful activity. Invalidity is, on the contrary, inferred when it leads to failure or contradiction. So this is again, so basically this is Partha Pramanavad, the core doctrine of Nyaya school. Now, how it fits in epistemic framework of Nyaya, let us see. Every knowledge situation involves 4 elements. First is knower, that is pramatra, then prameya, then praman, and then prama. So pramatra is knower, prameya is object of knowledge, praman is means of knowledge, and prama is the resulting true cognition. All are Sanskrit terms, very important. Sometimes these also come in exam. And some of the candidates, they are not aware of this, they may not understand the meaning properly. So please try to go through it, understand, remember, use also whenever you discuss these kind of theories in your answering your exam questions. So knowledge is generated by a pramana, but its validity is not inherent. It is determined externally, either by its practical utility or by inferential means. So these are the two, again, sources of knowing the valid knowledge. Now, distinction between validity and generation. Now, let us try to understand that. What is generation of knowledge and what is validation of knowledge? Because Nyaya has already told that at the time of generation or inception, knowledge is neutral, and its validation is subsequent activity only. So this is what we are going to understand now. Now, generation of knowledge is basically Jnana Utpatti, caused by pramanas. So this is generation. Validation of knowledge, that is pramanya jnana, requires inference from extrinsic success. So this is, there are 2 steps basically. Now, the excellence in the causal conditions of cognition leads to validity, while defects leads to invalidity. Now, let us try to understand. As I told, Swata Pramanavad is promoted by Mimamsa, Vartha Pramanvad is promoted by Nyaya school. So what are basic differences? I mean, we'll just try to understand a tabular form so that it's easy for you to compare, because once we come to Mimamsa school, we will again be discussing in detail Swata Pramanvad there. And these questions do come basically in the exam also. So nature of knowledge, as far as Partha Pramanvad is concerned, neutral at the time of origin. For Mimamsa, Swata Pramanvad is valid at the time of origin itself, unless contradicted. So nature of knowledge, main difference is here. Now, validity for Partha Pramanavad arises from external conditions. For Mimamsa, that is Swata Pramanavad, it's intrinsic, known by self-awareness. Now, main exponents, Nyaya school and Mimamsa school, so the philosophers name Vasyayan, Udyotkara, Jayant Bhatta, and here Kumaril Bhatt and Prabhakara. Now, what is test of truth? For Partha Pramanavad is successful activity. For Swata Pramanavad, it's non-contradiction, avadhitatva. Then epistemic priority. For Partha Pramanavad, truth is known after cognition arises. And here in Swata Pramanavad, validity is immediate and self-present. Now, what are the critical views? Now, as you know, Mimamsa and Nyaya schools are poles apart, I mean, totally against each other. So definitely, Mimamsa have criticized heavily Nyaya theory, and Nyaya in turn has criticized Mimamsa. So once we come to Mimamsa, we'll try to understand that. So here, Mimamsa criticism, if you see, Kumaril Bhatt argues that if validity is always externally established, then infinite regress follows. So first charge is of infinite regress. Now, second is, in practice, we immediately trust our perception unless contradicted. This shows that knowledge is prima facie valid. This is again another criticism. Now, what are pragmatic limitations? practical success may occur even with incorrect beliefs. So this is again important, because if our validity will depend on practical success, then it may even occur with incorrect beliefs. For example, coincidence. So this doesn't mean that knowledge is true. Therefore, success is not a foolproof test of truth, only a probable indicator. Now, Buddhism has also criticized that Dharmakirti. He says that all cognition is momentary, thus it cannot wait for validation post factum. What Buddhism says, that since all knowledge is momentary, it cannot validate with another knowledge gaining at another moment. So validity instead is grounded in logical necessity, that is tadatmya and tadutpatti. So again, this is Kant kind of theory. So again, we can mention it here whenever we discuss Buddhism epistemology. Now, Advaita Vedanta, Shankara argues that truth is known through self-evident awareness. That is Swayam Prakasa. External validation presupposes duality of knower and known, which is illusory in non-dualism. Or because they have their theory that there is no dualism, there is only single truth, Brahm. So there is no knower and known in Shankar Vedanta. Now, what was Nyaya's internal strength? Now, let us see, because this anyway we have seen the critical views. But Nyaya offers a fallibilistic framework where knowledge is tested and corrigible. Its emphasis on public objective verifications makes it compatible with scientific reasoning. It's again very, very important, because science is like that. You test it and you believe. Nyaya school also says the same thing. You test, if it's successful, yes. If not, then no. So basically, truth in Nyaya is like its value lies in both its substance and its currency in practice. So correspondence as well as workability. There are two tests of truth. Both are important as far as Nyaya is concerned. Now I will go to next seventh topic, subtopic of Nyaya school, that is theory of causation. That is Asat Karyavad. So earlier we have seen theory of validity. Now we will come to theory of causation. And again, they contrast with Mimamsa school, particularly as far as the theory of causation is concerned. So Asat Karyavad is promoted by Nyaya school, and Sat Karyavad is promoted by Sankhya Yoga and Mimamsa schools. So now let us see what are the theory of causation of Nyaya school in detail and how it differs with other schools of Indian philosophy. Now, what is Asat Karyavad? Asat Karyavad says theory of non-pre-existence of effect. So there is no pre-existent of effect in any cause. That is this theory. So in fact, if you see, except Charvak school, because Charvak doesn't believe in all Indian systems except Charvak, except this theory of causal relations motivated, because causal relations is not accepted by Charvak. And therefore, as I told, Indian theories are divided in two categories: Satkaryavad, that is identity theory, that is the effect is pre-existent in the cause itself, and Asatkaryavad, that is non-pre-existent theory, that is non-identity theory, that effect does not pre-exist in the cause. So this is promoted by Nyaya, Vaisesika and Buddhist. This is promoted by Sankhya Yoga and Advaita Vedanta. Now let us try to understand what is Asat Karyavad or Arambhavad. It is also called Arambhavad in detail. Now, the view that effect is a new entity which does not pre-exist in the cause. So this is called Arambhavad, that is theory of new beginning, or Asat Karyavad. The effect is brought into existence by conjunction of causes and is not merely a manifestation of what already existed in latent form. So this is the theory of Asat Karyavad or Arambhavad. Now, what are the arguments of Nyaya in favor of Asat Karyavad? Let us try to understand that. They have given a number of arguments, so we'll try to see what are those arguments. Now, first is redundancy of production. If the effect already existed in the cause, the notion of production, that is utpatti, would be meaningless. This is first. So creation implies new existence. Second is need for efficient cause. If the effect were already present in the material cause, there would be no need for an efficient cause, that is nimitta karan, such as potter for a clay pot. Then third is difference in name and function. That is, clay and pot have distinct names and purposes. So if effect were identical with cause, such difference would not arise. Now, fourth reason is transformation is not mere manifestation. The effect often involves new configuration not found in the cause itself. For example, curd is not a transformation of milk, but a reconstitution of its components. Now, fifth, perceptual evidence. We do not perceive the effect in the cause prior to its production. Threads do not show a cloth before weaving. So this is another example. So basically, Nyaya, with these 5 arguments, they want to prove that effect does not pre-exist in the cause, and it is a new beginning. Now, what Nyaya says regarding cause and effect, let us try to understand that also. Now, cause is karana, that is unconditional and invariable antecedent. This is called cause. Effect is unconditional and invariable consequent of a cause. So it is defined as the negation of prior non-existence. Now, what are characteristics of a valid cause? Let us try to understand that also. Karan Lakshana. A valid cause must be the immediate antecedent, purvavritti, be invariably and unconditionally connected to the effect, that is niyat, anyatha siddha, be free from irrelevant or accidental associations. Now, Nyaya has again given various categories of causes or classified the causes. Now, let us try to understand what are those. First is samvai karana, that is material cause. Second is asamvai, that is non-errant cause. And third is nimitta karana, that is efficient cause. Now, with example, if we see, now, for example, if threads are woven in a cloth, so threads are the material cause for a cloth. Now, conjunction of threads or their color is non-errant cause, asamvai karana. And weaver who produces the cloth is nimitta karana. So if you understand these kind of 3 causes for 3 kinds of causes, then we can understand that. Now, distinction from accidental antecedents. Now, let us see how they have distinguished. Nyaya differentiate causal antecedents from accidental ones, which are not unconditional. For example, mere accompaniment, that is the weaver's shirt, or remote cause, the weaver's father, or co-effects, smoke and heat from fire, or eternal constants, space and time, unnecessary entities, that is weaver's donkey. So all these are not direct causes. That's what they want to say. So these are basically accidental ones, or anyatha siddha, or which are, basically not the correct causes for production of cloth. Now, we'll try to understand these 2 kinds of theories, asat karyavad and sat karyavad. Let us try to, brief understand, because later again we will take up these kind of differences. These are main theories of the Indian, philosophical schools. Now, asat karyavad is propounded by Nyaya Vaisesika, Buddhists. Sat karyavad is propounded by Sankhya Yoga. And if you see, Advaita Vedanta, though it's in a way Sat karyavad, but they believe in Vivartavad, because they bring out the concept of Maya and then accordingly Vivartavad. Jainism believes in Syadvad, which is another theory of causation. So these are 4 main theories of causation. Now, what are the theories they say? Asat karyavad says that effect does not pre-exist in cause. It is a new creation. Sat karyavad says effect is latent in cause and it's already existent. What is Vivartavad saying? They say that effect is an illusion or appearance, and it's not real. What Syadwad says, effect is both identical and non-identical. It's conditional and pluralist. Now, what are this? Let us try to understand critical evaluation of this doctrine of Asat Karwad propounded by Nyaya school. What are the strengths? It's consistent with empirical observation. It respects logical principles. These are positive points as far as Asat Karwad is concerned. It is clear, it has a clear distinction of categories. So these are very, very important, strong points as far as Nyaya school is concerned. What are the critical points which other schools have criticized? Sankhya school says if the exist is entirely new, it emerges out of nothing, which violates the principle of nothing comes from nothing, that is ex nihilo nihil fit. So this is Sankhya school's criticism. Advaita Vedanta says the theory ignores metaphysical unity of reality. All plurality, including causal conditions, are illusory. So because they criticizes because of different reason, because of Maya and illusion. Now, Buddhist divergence, what is Buddhist divergence? Though, I mean, they are part of Asat Karyavad, but they assert Chanikvad also. They bring Chanikvad also, that is moment theory of momentariness also. The cause itself ceases to exist when effect arises, which Nyaya denies. Nyaya holds that cause persists after effect production. So there is a difference, even though both are in a way Asat Karyavadins, but there is a minor difference also here. Now, what Jaina philosophy says, Jaina believes in Syadvad. They criticize both extremes. That is both. They criticize Asatkarvad also, Satkarvad also, and they propose Syadvad, affirming that effects are both new and related to the cause depending on the context. And they again bring the theory of Anekantavad, which we have already read when we read Jaina. Then now let us try to understand whether Nyaya's inconsistent, what is Nyaya's inconsistent realism? If the cause is real and the effect is equally real, but effect does not pre-exist, then how is causal continuity ensured? So this is again another important criticism as far as Nyaya school is concerned. So critics point to a lack of metaphysical grounding in Nyaya's atomism. So this is again important criticism. But Nyaya's Asatkarvad is very, very important. It's empirical kind of theory. It's logically rigorous and observationally grounded. We have already seen its strengths. Effects are not mere manifestations, but new ontological entities. So its focus on tripartite causalities and empirical realism makes it a very, very important and unique theory of Indian philosophy. However, rejection of latent potentiality in causes and instance on strict external production invites critique from more holistic and integrative metaphysical systems like Sankhya, Advaita, and Jainism. Now we'll come to eighth topic of the Nyaya Vaisesika school, their theory of self, that is Atma. What they say in that. Now, Nyaya school believes in liberation because almost all Astic schools believe in liberation in Indian philosophy. So, and they do believe that the cessation of suffering is through valid knowledge. So this goal presupposes the existence of a permanent conscious self, that is Atma, which is a substratum of experience, memory, moral responsibility, and liberation. So wherever liberation or memory or moral responsibility comes, a self is presupposed, basically. So Nyaya conception of self is a realist and pluralist one. The self is treated as a distinct, eternal, immaterial substance separate from body, mind, and senses. Now, what is the metaphysical nature of self in Nyaya school? Now, let us see. Now, substance or dravya, that is, self is one of the 9 dravyas or substances in Nyaya Vaisesika metaphysics. Mostly it's Vaisesika because, you see, as I told, metaphysical and ontological theories have been advanced by Vaisesika schools mainly. And with a very, very minor modifications, Nyaya schools have accepted that. Similarly, Nyaya schools have advanced epistemological theory, which with a very minor modifications, Vaisesika schools have accepted that. So here also, the self is one of the 9 dravyas in Nyaya Vaisesika metaphysics. Then self is non-material and all-pervading. It's immaterial. Then it's partless and eternal. That is nirvaya and nitya. It has no spatial or temporal parts, hence indestructible and uncreated. Then desire, volition, cognition, pleasure, pain, these are gunas of the self and cannot exist without a substratum. Thus, the self is real, permanent, and this substratum of consciousness, not consciousness itself. So this is basically the view of the Nyaya and Vaisesika school also as far as self is concerned. Now, how self is known? Basically, what epistemological justification they have given, Nyaya school has given, let us try to understand that. Nyaya offers both inference and mental perception, that is manas pratyaksha, as proofs of self. Inference, how desire, aversion, knowledge, etc. are qualities. Every quality must inhere in a substance. The body, senses, or mind cannot be the ultimate substratum. They are perishable and inert. Therefore, there must be a distinct non-material substance, that is self. So this is their conclusion as far as inference is concerned. Now, what is mental or manas pratyaksha? This which was advocated by later Nyayiks. Self, they hold that self is known directly through introspection as the locus of mental states. So this is again what they say. One perceives oneself as the agent of experience, while other selves are inferred from their purposeful actions. So this is how self is known, basically. Now, distinction from other entities. Other entities mean other substances. Now, let us see what they advocate. For example, body. Body is material, perishable. Senses are and instrument of action. Senses are material, external, contact based. That is, they convey sensory inputs. Mind, that is manas, is internal, atomic, and intermediary. It connects senses with self. But what is self? Self is immaterial, partless, and eternal. It is real knower, that is gyata, doer, that is karta, enjoyer, that is bhokta. So this is how self differs from other entities. Now, Nyaya arguments against Buddhism, Anatman doctrine. Buddhism has given Anatta doctrine, because when we studied Buddhism, in detail we dealt with Anatta doctrine, that is doctrine of non-self or no self. Now, Nyaya school has heavily criticized that. So, because Buddhism denies a permanent self, posing instead a causal stream of mental and physical events, that is what Buddhism has given the doctrine of Anatta. Now, Nyaya says, on various grounds they have criticized. So, first is memory ground, that is smriti. Memory requires some experiencer across time. If no enduring self, recollection becomes unintelligible. So, this is first reason. Second is synthesis of experience. Cross-modal perception requires a unified subject. Third is agency and moral responsibility. Without a stable agent, moral responsibility and karma become incoherent. Now, this is very, very important criticism, which questions have also been asked earlier in earlier exams. So that if Buddhism believes, and we have dealt also this question when we dealt with Buddhism chapter. You can see that video on Buddhism on my YouTube channel also, that how a moral responsibility can be possible when there is no self doctrine of anatta by Buddhism. So these are the criticism for Nyaya as far as Buddhism doctrine of anatta is concerned. Now, Nyaya's conception of consciousness. Now, let us try to understand that. Consciousness is not inherent or continuous as far as self is concerned. And this is differing from Vedanta. This is differing from Vedanta school. Now, consciousness arises only when self comes into contact with mind, senses, and external objects. Thus, self is capable of consciousness, but is not always conscious. Consciousness is epistoic, not essential. So this is how they differentiate between self and they say consciousness is different. Now let us say how they define the multiple number of selves or uh, pluralistic ontology or plurality of selves. Now let us see what they are saying about that. Each individual has a distinct self, that is Atma. If there were only one universal self, everyone would share thoughts, memories, and experiences, which is empirically false. Hence, there are infinitely many selves, each undergoing transmigration and karmic consequences independently. So, this is a theory of infinite selves, you can call. Now, how self and liberation is connected with the theory of self? Self is bound by karma in empirical life. Liberation occurs when self is freed from bondage and attains a state of pure existence. In liberation, the self retains its existence but is devoid of consciousness as there are no desires, contacts, or cognition. So, liberation is not merging as in Advaita. Advaita Vedanta, what they say, that Atma merges in Brahma. Here it's not merging, but isolation of the self from suffering. So, they have a different concept of liberation, which is related with self is identified from suffering and ignorance. Now, let us try to critically evaluate this doctrine of self. Advaita Vedanta has criticized, obviously, Nyaya self is plural, unconscious, and passive, which contradicts the self-luminous, ever-conscious Brahma of Advaita. Sankara argues that consciousness cannot be epistoic. It is very essence of self. So, therefore, their criticism. Now, Buddhists, how they have criticized, Dharmakirti and Ratnakirti, argue that Nyaya self is a constructed fiction. They call it a constructed fiction. All experience can be explained via momentary, causal, connected events, that is, Chanikvad. Now, in Nyaya, internally also there have been difference of opinion. Nyaya holds that self is unconscious in liberation, yet eternal and real, leading to metaphysical puzzles. What are those puzzles? How can liberation be a positive state if it lacks consciousness? Is a consciousness less self-meaningful? So these are again questions asked there because there are internal contradictions in this theory. Now, what is the strength of Nyaya's theory of self? It offers a strong realist foundation for ethics, memory, knowledge, and karma. Obviously, it does, because if there are every self is responsible for its own karma, its own moral values, its own memory, knowledge, then definitely this kind of theory is a very, very realist kind of theory. Now, it emphasizes introspective awareness and intersubjective inference in justifying the self. So, therefore, in conclusion, we can say that Nyaya's theory of self presents a realist, pluralistic, and empirically grounded conception of enduring subject, while sharply opposed to Buddhist and Advaitic accounts. It provides a logical framework for explaining knowledge. Its notion of a non-essential consciousness may seem counterintuitive, because this is a very strong criticism has been done by various schools we have seen, but its emphasis on experiential continuity and epistemic necessity reinforces its philosophical robustness. So this completes the Nyaya Vaisesika school. Now, what questions we will be taking for model answers next week? I can just tell those two questions. Now, first question is, examine the concept of God in Nyaya philosophy and its proof through causality. Second is, explain the Vaisesic theory of atomism. Is it scientific? So these two questions we will be taking in next lecture, and we will also try to start Sankhya Yoga school, which again I will be trying to complete in 2 lectures. So next time, next class, I will be starting the topics of Sankhya Yoga, and we'll try to give model answers and discuss these questions, which I have given 2 questions from Nyaya Vaisesika school. So thanks a lot for participating in today's class and seeing this video. We will again come up with the next class next week. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.